Welcome to Vampire Divorce with attorney Clarke Young.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of Vampire Divorce with attorney Clarke Young. I am your host, Mike Leon. Clarke here is a seasoned family law attorney, consultant, and expert witness who's been helping the courts and families navigate the realities of high-conflict custody cases. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about virtual visitation. Clarke's going to explain what happens when a screen starts standing in front of a parent and why the courts need to treat these orders with more care than they often do. Clarke, it's good to see you as always. Let's talk about what the courts usually mean when they issue a virtual visitation order. Like, why are these orders becoming more commonplace?
The reason they're doing that is the courts are under this misguided notion that it's better to have a screen visit with your child than it is not to have any contact at all. And I suppose even from the call it the alienated parents' point of view, they would rather see their child on a video than not see their child at all. And I think the jury is out on whether or not, as a mental health psychological phenomenon, whether or not this is actually a good idea.
Well, then let me ask you then, because it funnels into a follow-up perfectly. How does the virtual visitation change the nature of this parent-child relationship? Especially, you got younger kids that could be in high conflict situations.
I think I'm going to answer this question, and I'm going to be a little bit political about it. I would favor legislation that made it a criminal offense, gross parent neglect, child neglect, to allow any child under the age of 6 years old or 5 years old to even look at a screen. And the reason I feel that is that after doing this for 40 years or so, I've come to the conclusion, as have many other people, that the virtual reality, that's an appropriate word, is nothing more than virtual. And when you take a young child, an infant, and you start handing it a phone to look at whatever, and they're looking at images on a screen that go from violence to peaceful to it's nighttime to it's daytime to the music that's wonderful and peaceful to very disturbing, and the images go from one thing to another, they develop a reality in their mind streams, in their brains, that is the sort of chaotic world that they live in. Up until the age of the internet, for millions of years, children were raised in a world where they would see the sun come up in the morning, go down at night, and things were pretty much sequential, and they made sense, and they could make sense of it. So what we're really doing is we're imprinting these children with a false sense of reality. So now we know from studies that they call it doom scrolling, where you get online and you're getting your dopamine and endorphins and all these hormonal things are going on. It's messing with your circadian rhythms. It's really not good for anybody, frankly. No one should be on the internet if they could help it. Of course, we can't help it because we all have to earn a living, and we're all our whole lives are centered around technology. But to bring this back specifically to your question, that's what's happening with the virtual reality. You have an avatar parent who's a two-dimensional image on a screen. The only senses that are being employed are your eyes and your ears. There's no touch, there's no smell, there's no sense of reality, there's no cuddling, there's nothing that's going on. So even though some people think that these virtual visitations are better than nothing, I think the opposite's happening. I think that the child is becoming bonded to an avatar and being severed from the actual parent. So I just don't think they're psychologically healthy, and I think they're misguided in the extreme.
Yeah. Well, then, Clarke, let me ask you, are there situations that you see, given your experience, where the virtual visitation makes sense? And if so, What are some of the boundaries or safeguards you think the court should be including if they approve it?
Oh, number one, there are people, for example, military service members who are deployed, and they want to see their children on a screen. That's great. That's fine. I'm not talking about that situation. I'm talking about where you have restraining orders, where one person is a targeted parent and they're not allowed to see their child, and the um, alienating parent is controlling that. Now, in those situations, I would say there's no situation where you should have virtual visitation unless you're on the opposite coast or something and you're not there. All right, well, then I have issues with that because why aren't you near your child? Why aren't you there? I see no examples ever where virtual visitation is better than supervised visitation. If somebody thinks that there's a threat to the child safety because the borderline parent says there's a threat of some kind, which is again probably a confession projection, in those cases, the court should order supervised visitation. Let the supervised parent pay for it, subject to reallocation later. But I would just say the short answer is do supervised visitation. And if the court won't do that, you're in the wrong courtroom, and the court's the problem.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the wrong courtroom. So the judge out there that thinks Clarke Young doesn't know what he's talking about, FaceTime and Zoom, they're harmless. Explain what developmental or psychological factors you think that they're overlooking.
Well, I think we've pretty much hit this issue. I mean, I think that especially for infants to age 4 or 5 and those young children, I don't think they should be near a screen at all for the reasons I just said. For adolescents and teenagers, anyone under 18, but teenagers, as they get older, yeah, they can do virtual visitations with their estranged or alienated parent. But I just don't think that, again, that is it's not only not the ideal resolution to the issue, it's probably at the bottom of the list of what should be happening.
Yeah. Can I ask you when a borderline parent, let's say, uses the virtual visitation to, let's say, intrude or control rather than connect, right? What remedies or modification can the non borderline personality disorder parent request in that situation?
This concept, this reality that borderlines are going to manipulate the virtual visitation scenario is in every case. Borderlines just can't help themselves. They are going to control, and manipulate and subjugate any way they can. So you can get an order, and this is the order you want. You want an order that says that if the child's old enough, the child's going to be in a room alone. It's not, no other parent won't be around. Or you might take the child, even better, to a neutral location where you know that there's not another surveillance camera in the room recording everything that both of you say anyway, although the child is too naive and innocent to realize that the borderline parent is most likely recording everything, even though there's an order that says thou shalt not. So those are the kinds of things. And you see this come up because the borderlines can't help but in their pleadings later mention things that were supposed to be either confidential or could only have occurred or been said during the monitored visitation that's virtual. So it's problematic again, and I know courts think these orders are going to move things forward in some way, but they really don't. They are empowering and enabling the pathogenic parent.
Yeah. Clark, as we put a bow on this episode, you mentioned already earlier on about what you want legislators to do, but what do you hope overall courts and legislators start to understand about the long-term impact of, replacing the real-world parenting with the digital contact?
Well, basically, whether it's legislators or really judges or mental health professionals or litigators, attorneys or their clients, everyone has to be aware and stop playing this game that somehow they're actually addressing the underlying psychological issue that's driving the conflict. As I've said on many of these episodes, these conflicts will never get resolved unless and until the courts start addressing front and center the psychological dysfunction and pathology that's driving the conflict. And that means there would have to be a complete overhaul of the family court system. What I would like to see happen are some pilot programs in different counties around this country where they actually put on staff a team of people who specialize in dealing with narcissists and borderlines. So you have a psychologist who isn't doing this. Right now they have these facilitators, or the family court facilitator's office, or the mediator's office. And these are people who have a master's degree in psychology, or more likely sociology. And they are the perfectly wrong people to be dealing with these cases because it's so far beyond their pay grade. But the family courts have to stop pretending that you can have people who don't know anything about borderline personality disorder and narcissism deal intelligently with this pathology. They can't. It's not possible. Yeah. So if you're going to put a team together as a family court system, you need to have first-rate evaluators who have clinical experience with borderline personality disorder and narcissism. Then you have to have eyes and ears for the court to go out and really do an evaluation. And this should happen with the same urgency that they now currently give domestic violence restraining orders. Restraining orders in LA County, we have entire departments that are dedicated to hearing nothing but domestic violence allegations all day long, every day. And it's just a factory where they stamp the order, next, and then they assign the case to someone or not, another judge, and then it's heard at a regular due process hearing. But the system is a scam. There's no real due process in this. I mean, it doesn't happen. And you have to be a good litigator to be able to get the court even to give you your so-called constitutional due process rights. Yeah. And that's a major issue. So if you throw that system out, what are you going to replace it with? And that is a system that actually, over a 2 or 3 month period, actually spends hundreds of hours trying to get to the bottom of what's going on by doing psych evaluations of both of the parents, interviewing the child's therapist, interviewing school teachers, interviewing everybody, and coming up with a really comprehensive child custody evaluation, not these nickel-dime things they come up with now.
Clarke, thank you as always for the time, insights. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you for having me again.
And thank you to everyone out there for listening to this episode of Vampire Divorce. If you want to reach out to Clarke and connect with him, do me a favor, visit clarkeyoung.com today. Please like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.